foolishly, as it turned out, told Ned lots of stories about the walk I did 18 years ago to try and make sense of my brother's death, when I walked Land's End to John O'Groats by about 1,300 miles. But I decided, A, we didn't have the time, and B, I didn't think my feet would take it anymore. So we'd have to cycle if we were going to do the same sort of journey. But then, because I'm scared of bikes and cars in the same space, we'd have to do it off-road. As it turned out, that made the task very difficult. Duncansby Head. We've just done our first hill, which is fine, although I don't appear to have any lungs left. Good luck, Billy. Good luck, Nedmond.
Cheers.
The stuff we filled the bike packs with, the tent was a super lightweight, very, very small 3-man tent from Alpkit. The roll mats were the size of bananas. They were fantastic objects. X-lights. The sleeping bags were super light and were useless as soon as the temperature dropped at all, but were great until that point. And so on and so forth. So we got the lightest gear. We took nothing we didn't want. We didn't need it all the time. We took no spare clothes other than, you know, I literally had a pair of trousers to wear in the evening when I was sick of wearing lycra. So we travelled very light, and in fact people looked at our packs and continually said, I can't believe you're self-sufficient with that. Probably the heaviest thing was water and food. The water we carried on our backs in rucksacks, and we all carried a bit of food, and then the boys had snack pouches to carry boost bars and so on and so forth. Just cycling out of John O'Groats.
Well, after the challenge of turning up here at John O'Groats with rain pouring down and trying to set up the tent, we've just encountered this old Scottish lady with a dog who, promptly seeing us, tried to savage Billy, pulled her and the dog out into the middle of the road, which nearly got run over as we cheerily smiled and drove by.
What do you have to say for yourself?
The old ladies are either evil or nice.
Rescued, really. And the roads ran out. We had this. Still horseflies. Just killed one. Altnabriac station. We are nowhere. The thing that was tough about the first day was just the sitting on the saddles. You know, over the course of the first 3 days, our butts were so sore. It was just massive empty country, and the problem was that the insect life was pretty keen on us, and so stopping was not really an option. The horseflies were the biggest problem, and we fled from place to place, pursued by a thick cloud of horseflies.
The last stretch I've had plenty of energy, which I could have used earlier.
Yeah, you have had loads of energy. That's been amazing. Been trying to push your brother off, haven't you?
And slightly lower lights was earlier on. It went for days. It felt like we've been cycling for years.
Went from rubbly rocks onto like sand, which, although looked like an improvement, mentally was discouraging as it sounded like you were sticking to the ground. We waved to a train and he hooted us. The lone train in the middle of the wilderness.
Altnabriac.
Altnabriac, no roads.
How do you feel this morning?
Bollocks.
Crossing a watershed. The watershed being also that we've got back on the bikes.
Having a power snack. So far, we've been on open mountain, and open mountain. We're going to do cool little villages with little corrugated iron roofs, and everything's been really nice. Our butts ache to the point of despair.
It's just one tree.
So mean. And then we're going to go over the cliffs over there, which we haven't seen yet.
Dad, he's indestructible. He's still moving.
Kill him.
I've like put all. I don't want to touch him.
You have to get in between your nails, yeah? 2 nails. You can pop them between your 2 nails.
Yes, I think I killed him this time. Trackless wilderness is almost unrideable. It keeps tempting you back on the bike, but then, oh, it's so bumpy, especially when you've got a butt. I feel like Forrest Gump. Day 2 started with a fast few miles on tarmac, followed by 15 miles of grinding climb on sand tracks to the sublime Loch Gur. Then we took a single track rock fest which climbed to the watershed, pushing our bikes and only living for the inevitable descent to the Crask Inn on the other side, which was not to be. A trackless bog of 5 miles. We could see the inn, but didn't reach it for hours. The final weary 12-mile run into Leg and we were there. We'd done 2 days.
We started off with a little roadie bit before getting to a crazy high bridge that's made of metal with like complete gaps in it, so it's literally like cycling over nothing over the water. Very, very high. And then we proceeded to Billy falling over. And then after we'd finished our rotation, we went into the woods. We saw 3 big stags with massive antlers, and now we're going through this crazy U-shaped glacier valley with us and cows. That's it.
There's some cows there.
It's good to get a stick and get them off the path, isn't it? Look how beautiful it is. That was a good hill, wasn't it? That was a good hill. So we've come across an obstacle, multiple obstacles, multiple fallen trees, and we're just trying to get the bicycles through as best we can. Obviously they're damned heavy because they've got all our got all our stuff. You can see the boys there struggling to, probably arguing. They argue beautifully. This is pretty tough.
He's trying to push it off the tree.
It's fair to say that the video shows the boys porting bicycles through a mess of fallen trees, which took us quite a long time. What it doesn't show is the fact that the trees were absolutely coated in ants. Every single surface was coated in ants, which weren't thrilled that we were there. We went off and did a recce, and it appeared that the path was possible beyond about, I don't know, 4, 5 or 6 stands of fallen trees that we would have to carry the bikes over or through. In certain places we cut branches with my multi-tool, but it was slow business. Once we got the bikes through the final fallen trees, it became obvious that we simply couldn't go on. The gorse just closed around the path, and that was that. So having gone all that way, slightly heartbreakingly, we then had to turn around and carry the bikes all the way back the way we'd come. So I think it's fair to say we learnt a lesson that day, which was do your recce's properly before you start carrying bikes around. And thereafter we did that.
Well, we started with a couple of mile completely wrong detour, which ended up with us going back on ourselves. And after we corrected ourselves, it's absolutely baking. We cycled along a heavy road with massive lorries, which was pretty terrifying for ages. We just climbed up this absolutely fatty hill, which for some reason doesn't look hard on the map, but is terrible to find a herd of alpacas. And yeah, that's our day so far.
And we cycled for 3 miles in the wrong direction at the beginning of the day. Did you mention that?
Yeah.
I'm so tired I can't hear you. Billy? Anything else?
That lamb's got a black bite.
Went down the most insane track, just down on the Great Glen way down to Loch Ness, and literally, like, it was the best track we've ever done in our entire lives. Like, every corner you so nearly overcooked because you could get so much speed on these soft surfaces, but it was like woody. But then it meant your back brake literally did nothing, and your front brake you'd kill yourself. So it was basically out of control, but insanely quick and super fun. Then we ended up here.
Anything to say about that descent, Billy?
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly.
We started really doing some big descents and ascents at this point. Some of the climbs just went on, and I guess it was building our fitness for later, but gosh, it hurt, particularly in the heat we had. And on one particular hill that had gone on and on and on, sort of one hill on top of another, we finally reached the top of a gravel track in the middle of nowhere, where propped against the side of the track was a sign saying ice creams, which sort of felt like it must be a sort of cruel joke, really. But there, another quarter of a mile further on, was a chap called Big Wally and his enormously stocked ice cream van, which was just like manna from heaven. It was fantastic. It made everything worthwhile.
And after the fast-flowing single track down the side of Loch Ness, we had to do 4 miles on the road at the bottom, and every fourth car tried to push us into the bushes, and we escaped barely with our lives.
Cycling along the Caledonian Canal, aiming for at least Fort William today, maybe Kinloch 11, but the weather looks awful later with thunderstorms. I don't fancy hanging onto a metal bike on a mountain in a thunderstorm. Boys are happy because at the local Londis we got black pudding and square sausage buns. They're probably barn cakes or something.
Well, this morning we started at Fort Augustus, and we hadn't completed the previous day, so we did a fair few miles, like 12 miles along a canal path. So basically flat, made super speed, and then along the canal all the way to Fort William. By the end of that, it was miles and miles and miles. We'd done insane distance for the time, up to 12 o'clock, and we had a panini in Fort William when we arrived. We were early, but now we're lying at the top of a mountain in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I'll see if I can show you. It's just on top of the... I can't, but... Yeah. You can see Ben Nevis over there. We've just climbed about 50 billion miles up into the mountains, and we're about to join the West Highland Way and join the Pink Line again. So we're en route. We've got about 8.5 miles until we're there.
Changing the weather.
now on a high pass at a ruined farm in the rain, eating crunchies. Goodness knows what he's up to. And then you'll see, and over there, that's our way out.
I was scared of the West Highland Way because it seemed to me it was just going to be too difficult to cycle with the boys. But in the event, while it was difficult and the tracks were really rubbly and very steep, it wasn't impossible, and there was an immense sense of satisfaction having actually done it. The problem really was that our uphills were long, slow grinds with lots of pushing, and the downhills were just vertiginous zigzags straight down to the valley bottoms, which were utterly terrifying with the constant risk of going head over the handlebars. The boys more or less rode them all, and I pushed down half of them. And finally we got to the bottom at Kinloch Leven, where we weathered the big storm that had been coming from America. I thought the tent was going to take off in the night, and clung on to the outer for an hour in the small hours while the wind howled around us and the stench of the septic tank overwhelmed us. I thought the boys had trodden in terrible things, but in fact it was just the rich, pungent smell of shit that was whirling around our tent in the small hours. And then the day after we had a day off, where the boys went bouldering.
Wet, lightningy, and sleepless, pretty much.
Despite the forecast not saying anything about the wind or anything, we woke in at 12 because the wind was threatening to pull the surface of the tent off due to the hurricane. So we were awake for that, and then eventually in the morning it hadn't blown off, luckily enough. Dad just got things in a bit harder despite sitting at the bottom of the valley, and well, a lot of our stuff got wet, but it could have been a lot worse. Now a quarter of a mile up, straight in the air, up a hill, heading towards the Devil's Staircase.
But we're almost half a kilometre in the air. We've climbed that over the course of the last hour and a bit. I think the Devil's Staircase is just in front of that horrid looking lump straight ahead. So that's where we're going. And then we zigzag down. Who knows if that's going to be possible to ride. We'll see. Okay, so here we are reaching another watershed. I'm chasing Ned, who is the undisputed Gold Star King of the uphill. And Billy is the Gold Star King of the downhill. And I'm the donkey panting at the back. Oh, here he is. Okay, get on. Well done, Billy, you're a beast.
In the event, the Devil's Staircase was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I spent my day off worrying about getting over it and how difficult it would be for us. The main problem was it was absolutely covered in foreign walkers, which was fantastic in terms of people being interested and amused to see us on bicycles on it. But it meant we had to give way to people a lot. And then in the afternoon after that, going down through Glencoe and out the other end of Glencoe to the Bridge of Orkney, we got so wet and so cold. We sat in the pub at the Bridge of Orkney and tried to warm up under the hand dryers and with hot chocolates. But at that point I realised we just weren't carrying the kit to stay dry if it was really serious rain, and I took the view that from now on, if the rain was really heavy, we would wait until it got better.
It's between the showers. Quite lovely here. I don't know where we are. So we've left the West Highland Way, having done it before the bit that's unrideable and before the road down Loch Lomond, which apparently is absolutely appalling. And we headed east for a while on a fairly tricky road, a bit stressful, rain and spray and stuff. And now we're whacking along this old railway line, having summited. I'm going to have to put the phone down a minute because we've got a very narrow gap to get through. If I mess that up, I go head over heels. See the boys go through it. 1, 2 safely, 2, 3 safely. Done it. There he is. And Billy is suffering from a knee, so we've put something on his knee. He says it's a bit better.
pretty bit, though. It's not where we are.
We started off last night. We stayed in a lodge to escape the nasty hurricane weather, and woke up and it was lashing with rain. So we had a slow start, and when we did eventually start later on in the day, I had a crash resulting in a ripped fang, a ripped side of the leg, and a bent neck hanger. We think, which is pretty nasty. And it eventually stopped raining. We got on the Route 7 and we were making shortcuts to cut through. It's been good. We've all been going quickly. We reckon we're getting close to Canal, which is our destination now. We stopped for lunch and the midges have just found us. But basically, a not too bad day.
Billy, how's your sandwich?
It's a good sandwich.
How's your knee?
My knee's okay.
What about the other knee?
The other knee's fine.
What about your neck?
My neck hurts.
Did the gel do anything?
I don't think so.
I find it helps me.
Yeah.
Is there any truth in the rumour that you've stolen Ned's socks?
There is none.
Hmm.
I had 3 pairs of socks.
We're all watching you closely. Pretty alongside the loch. We're doing another 11 miles to Aberfoyle. There goes Billy, and then we're going to stay for the night. That should work nicely for us. And then we'll only be 17 miles behind on our day schedule, despite the tough day we had yesterday. By the time we got to Aberfoyle, the bikes were so shot. Well, Billy's was fine, and we reckoned because he was a bit lighter, he'd put less stress on the bike, but Ned's, the gears just were not changing properly, and however I tried to adjust them, and I have fists of ham and fingers of butter, I couldn't get them working right, and mine similarly was clunking and banging all over the place.
This morning we have cycled to Aberfoyle so Ned and Dad can get their bikes fixed, and while that's happened we have had a massive back thing of square sausages and what is it, black pudding, and there are lots of weird sheep with 4 horns.
Billy's been feeding them.
Yeah, they've
But
been
now we're sat around, it's 10 o'clock and we still got to do the rest of yesterday's day and today's day for nightfall somehow. But our bikes are dismantled at the minute.
What's wrong with the bikes, Ned?
My front's squeaking, my derailleur is dented, the chain's stretched because I crashed. Dad's chain is stretched too.
Got the flies around me, hideous, but they don't appear to be clegs, so I don't think I'm being bitten. Just having to drag the bikes up this thing where they've made a new logging road.
You got like 50,000 mosquitoes on you.
More trackless wilderness, lost the path, couldn't find it at all, so we're having to push through thick grass and reeds, over streams, etc. Hopefully we can find the path again in a little while. The ride from Aberfoyle to Cumbernauld was a sort of descent from the beauties of the Highlands into a much more difficult world to cross. The wind was in our faces, we started meeting big roads, we passed under the M80 I think, and we ended up at frankly the world's worst campsite. It was attached to a kind of some form of entertainment that involved rescued birds, and described itself as a campsite despite the fact it was a field covered in wasps' nests. And we put the tent up and instantly it was full of wasps and we had to move the tent, and it was full of big groups of men speaking odd European languages, which made me slightly nervous, and
There were no showers. The toilets were 200 yards down the road in the bird sanctuary place. It just felt like the end of the world, and I can't tell you how glad we were to leave.
This feels like where Satan digs his coal. Here comes Billy. And there's really not a lot of anything, including path. Here comes Bill. Well done, Billy. And then there's more of that. And there's more of that. And there's one of those. And then there's the path we're supposed to be going down, which we're going to abandon because it looks like that.
And we've just ended up in this trackless grass filled with, yeah, it's trackless. filled with thistles we've had to walk through, so our legs are torn up.
We could have, I've made a mistake. So we went through a field for fun instead. Because thistle brushes are so nice. God knows where we are.
So the day was a long, slow slog across Lanarkshire, a kind of sub-industrial wasteland of canals and roads, where fishermen in combat jackets and mohawks were sort of slumped at the side of the canals, and lots of urban cyclists who didn't look up when they went past, unlike all those other cyclists we've ever met. And it was sort of resolutely grim, and the weather was threatening to dump on us the whole time, and it just felt hard to work out why we were doing this. And so at the end of the day, when we got to Biggar, I booked a hotel, and we had a night of luxury as the rain came in and lashed over the town for the night. And the boys went on their iPhones and stared at videos of people playing video games, as they do.
In the borders, the cheery sign awaited us just a couple of miles outside Biggar, which perked us up no end because Lanarkshire, really, we've had enough. But this is nice again. We're approaching a big hill crossing on tracks, which looks like it's going to go up into the clouds, I think. We'll see, I guess. The boys are full of beans again, restored to their usual high spirits by a night on soft linen. So behind Ned and Billy is somebody on lightweight bike, no pack, absolutely storming up this hill. Ned, how's your morning been? That's how you do it. None of our business.
So the cyclist who was storming up the hill behind us turned out to be deaf, but he was very, very fit. And when we got to the top of the hill, we met a group of horse riders, and they were utterly furious because he'd whipped past them. And one of the things that we learnt on our walk was that horses hate bicycles.
Round to the right beyond me. Again, another difficult track to find. I think Billy's in Pirates of the Caribbean. There's another one coming. We found a track, boys. Let's head down it to the road.
Do we go up?
Down.
Oh,
Always down.
yes.
Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Nice hair, Bilbo. Here comes Billy, waiting for his boost.
Dad, you're ready for the most graceful dismount.
Yeah. Leg on. Big descent. Going through a wilderness of felled trees on the top of another mighty hill.
It was a day of tremendous climbs and falls. The final descent to the Tushy Law Inn was one of the best road descents we had on the whole journey.
good breakfast in a community cafe in Exmoor, I think it was. We'll have 30 odd miles done before lunch, which is great. Look at the boys being naughty as usual. Here he comes, pedaling up the hill. He looks kind of knackered. His name is Bill.
We went along a dangerous road for a bit, but we're off now. When it's slightly misty, but it's a much better track.
Can I have my boost, whichever
Fairly
you
easy,
choose?
yeah, that evil one's got it.
Oh, excellent.
So we made it to the English border. That was a real moment of celebration. Although on our way across there we were nearly killed by the sort of traffic that I've been terrified of ever since I've gone onto a main road with a bicycle. But also having done that, we went into Langham, and there the bikes were playing up again, and a fantastic fellow called Tommy, who was the school bus driver, the town mechanic and the town's bike shop owner, tweaked all the bikes in his shop and got them all working again, and then refused payment. What a star, thank you Tommy.
Escort. We got caught in a field on the English side of the border, so that means we were trespassing for the first time, and the very kind lady farmer said she'd show us the way out. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll keep going, shall we?
The path ran out again in some woodlands, the sort of tussocky, wet, boggy woodlands that make it very difficult to push a bike. And we laboured through under the trees, dodging deer fences and trekking around the feeders for game birds and the like, until finally we found a track and escaped onto some moorland, where again the track began to fizzle out, and again we had to push over hummocks and tussocks.
So, heading on a byway which is very hard to define. On the moor, we are at least going downhill. Right, heading for that gap in the woods ahead. Boys, as far as the eyes can see, there's another one behind there. There it is. What are you doing, Billy? That's bad for the bone, you see. And our route is that way on some cycle path into Alston.
I sound quite hopeful talking about this cycle path into Alston, but in fact it kind of became the last straw for me that day, and I sort of tore my hair out rather. Because the cycle path roared its way along across that bridge and then vanished because the railway at some point had sold off the railway cottages, and so the cycle path could go no further because it was private garden with huge spiked gates. So we then had to carry our heavily laden bikes down a large number of steps and then up another large number of steps just to get round this thing on a cycle path. Previously it had been really tough. The pink line just vanished into bog and then vanished into forest, and we did a lot of pushing and dragging bikes through nettles, brambles, bog, woods, and then fled up onto the moors again.
Okay, so behind us is High Cup Nick. We came down to the left, you can see that ridge there. We came down there, and that's also at the top there is Cross Fell, which used to be called Fiends Fell. And the last time I was there, again 18 years ago, it was blowing such a hoolie I had to climb on my hands and feet to prevent me being blown straight off the top again. So we've found a new view to cross, and somehow we'll be crossing this and heading for those distant Pennines.
Getting to Dufton meant the most intense downhill we'd yet done, where touching the brakes was not an option. It was enormously steep, it was over grass, and you just had to flow with it and believe you'd get to the bottom. And we did get to the bottom, which was absolutely fantastic, so exhilarating.
So this is in the hills above Kirby Stephen. And that's where we're going, up there.
And then we went to Appleton, got our breakfast, and it was mainly back roads and things until eventually we got to Hawes, where there was about 1 billion motorcyclists. After been on fairly quick roads, to be fair, the wind was in our face, but it was still quite good. About 1,000 motorcyclists, so we headed swiftly out. We had our lunch. We just had buns with cheese and ginger beer. Now we've headed up here, up this big rubbly track, and we've got lots more moory hills to go by the looks of it.
Well, this was a crazy hard ascent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you just crash?
Yeah.
And we're up on the Cam Road. The Cam Road looks like this. Coming down the Penland Way, we had a horrible climb up the Cam Road, which was just rubble, like the sort of stuff you used to build a dry stone wall all over the ground on incredible slopes. So every 3 feet up you slipped one back. How they behave when they're floating along. See, they fiddle around. They refuse to hold on to their handlebars most of the time. They just play. This is a very welcome respite while we're climbing and falling. And a pretty one too. Here we are, somewhere between Colne and Hebden Bridge, on a bit of nothing that I never knew existed. There's poor Billy toiling up the hill. Far as many cars on this road. And that's what it looks like. Big bit of nothing. There's Ned, who's pedalled up the hill. Well done, Ned. So this is Hebden Bridge. We're in West Yorkshire. Feels like a milestone. Home. And it's pretty too. And we had the most amazing descent down through Hardcastle Crags, about 1,000 miles an hour, which was great fun.
18 years previously, the floods in Hebden Bridge were so bad that some old fellow had lost his false leg to the tumult. So I'd had to pause the walk and wait for the floods to subside. We followed the canal up the valley, hoping to find a campsite further on along our route. And there, at the point we turned east to rise up across the Pennines again, right under the shadow of the M62, under the roar of the traffic, was a campsite where there should be no campsite. A pop-up campsite by the Caravan and Camping Club. When we got back from the pub, they locked our bikes away in an awning, and Christine showed us her skills with a bullwhip.
Then we climbed up onto the moor, and it's taken absolutely forever to do steps. And we've done like 3 miles now at most, and we're on top of a mossy top bit of the moor.
This is getting ever closer to home Perth in a couple of days rest. In some ways not like it used to be. It's now all covered in stones taken from the textile mills that have closed. Down in town Perth, final descent.
There's something about the Pennines, the hills are both long and steep, and they went up and down and up and down. But eventually we got to home Firth, and then we had 2 days off with my mother. And there were things to do. The bikes required repairs. Fair to say, the guys at the shop in Huddersfield, who did an excellent job of repairing them at last minute, they said we'd really sort of use the bikes beyond what they were built for. And other than that, we just hung out and relaxed and played croquet and took it easy for 2 days. And it required quite a lot of stamina, or sort of mental stamina, to get back on the bikes again 2 days later. I sort of felt like it was the last thing I wanted to do. But in fact, the next day was fun.
Gosh, this is bouncy a bit too. Heron.
Billy, who was doing the hula no-handed, had a high side, over the handlebars crash, at speed, landing neatly on his butt in a stream. Unhurt other than a bit more knee blood, wet pants. Eventually we reached Stoke to discover there were no campsites for miles around, so we took a Best Western and the hotel receptionist allowed us to take our muddy bikes up into the room where they sat dripping sadly onto the carpet. It should have been an easy day whipping through the heart of England on canal towpaths, but it wasn't. Sure, there's been a lot of boaty, jiggery pokery, including helping with the locks, something none of us had done before, dodging dogs, frightening ducks and so on, all perfectly pleasant pursuits for a summer's day. But finally I've met the surface I really can't cycle long distance. The field edges of the canals where there's no towpath remaining are lumpy and bumpy and kick you out of the saddle, and my backbone is no longer connected to my neck bone in any sense at all. We travel across these bits with me at the back groaning. The boys of course spring over them. I unravel. But then we get a bit of proper towpath again and the pace picks up and we're back to greeting boaters and fishermen and walkers. The biggest hazard, other than accidentally falling face first in a canal, is runners in the urban sections with earbuds in. They leap out of their skins when I bellow, "Excuse me!" having failed to attract their attention with a cheerful ping of my bell. And today we've become gongoozlers. Who'd have guessed it? So a whole day on canals and off-road. It got quicker, and I shall never tire of the great grey ghosts that lift off under our wheels and flap away slowly. There are hundreds of herons. I've never seen them so close. Then, under trees south of Wolverhampton, there was an arc of electric blue against the foliage, and a kingfisher soared over our heads and away. And as I was cycling along an unkempt hedgerow, a kestrel ripped through a gap not 20 feet in front of me and vanished from sight.
Hang on. Yeah, I think that's right.
A good corridor for wildlife, the canal system, it seems. As we neared the big urban areas, the cycle paths became smoother, but more pockmarked with shards of glass and plastic bottles. People were more inclined to hold their position on the towpath and not look at us as we slipped by. And through Wolverhampton itself, although 20 feet below along the canal, there was a crude roar and two small white scramblers blatted past, the drivers wearing skull masks and combat fatigues. They slowed momentarily to take us in, then revved and disappeared around a curve. Every strait was dotted with fisherfolk staring idly at the unruffled surface of the water. As I watched the spooling reflections, my mind would do a strange inversion, and suddenly the reflection and reality would switch places.
Basically, Dad fell on his face in a stream because the tyre stream ratio wasn't very accurate.
And he had a burst of confidence that no one had really predicted. Me and Billy were like, oh, hell no. And Dad's like, yes, I can do this.
Yeah,
this is my moment to shine.
The shape of Dad's tyre matched the shape of the stream bottom.
Of the rod.
And so when his front tyre landed in the stream...
He hit the stream and arced straight over onto his face. And then was pinned down by the bike in a brutal wrestling match under the foot of mud.
Yeah, it looked like he was being eaten by an alligator, to be fair. But
And the alligator was
just...
his bike.
Yeah.
He'd been completely stabbed in the back. He wasn't best thrilled, to be fair. To be fair, like grabbing a camera, all the electronics obviously were completely knackered afterwards.
Yeah,
Which, of
nothing
course,
was working. And
Well,
there
yeah.
was a muddy Dad.
And he ruined his coat that he'd had for the last 2 hours or something.
Yeah, bought that morning.
So this is us sneaking through Worcestershire, hoping to get to Gloucester. The weather's pretty miserable. What have you done? We're beside the M5, deafening racket, and we just pushed through some miles of wilderness to get to what we hope is a bridge just around the corner. Go up there, see if we can find a bridge. And whoa, skiddy wheels. So we're going up there to look for a bridge. There's Gloucester ahead. You can see the cathedral tower in the distance used for filming Harry Potter in the cloisters. Lovely cloisters. There we go. Woodmill. So we're just waiting for it to go down so we can fly down the Sharpness Canal and wend our way to Bristol and beyond. Off we go. Feels like a milestone. There go the boys, and there is the Severn Bridge. Heading for Bristol. Crossing over the Avon. Didn't know you could do it like this. It's the roar. Oh my goodness.
We celebrated our first glance of the towers of the old Severn Bridge. As we crossed the motorway, we dodged through an area of devastation around Avonmouth, where bushes were draped with streamers of grey plastic and the culverts were clogged with plastic trays and lumps of multicoloured refuse, floating in a scummy green algal blue. The air smelled like old feet and burning plastic bags, and in an underpass where a sign read, "No lights in underpass due to fire damage," a burnt-out car was weirdly stuffed with traffic cones, glowing orange in the blackened interior.
That is some pedalling. This hill, although flattened by the camera, is an absolute beast, black down. And you can see over there the Severn Estuary and some bit of Wales beyond it. I can even see the Severn Bridges shining over there in the light, and I can see behind me where we've come from towards Bristol over that hill that we toiled up some little moment before. And here comes Billy whizzing up the hill with his new pannier. You see him whizzing, and he can pedal up anything. That's amazing. He's pedalled up that. Quite extraordinary. I wouldn't have thought it possible. Well done, Ned. Brother Tom tells me that I go faster down hills because I'm fatter than him, and he goes faster up hills because he's skinnier than me.
Started with a lovely hill up to the
We didn't actually. We started with a flat tyre. My flat tyre.
and then we realised my tyre was flat, and then later on we realised Billy's was flat. It's absolutely baking. We're sitting on the first little rise of the Quantux, where we're hoping to find a campsite over the ridge. We're sitting on what is an abandoned campsite which we were planning on staying at, but...
Is there anything sadder than an abandoned campsite? No.
A
melted Bueno?
A melted Bueno. Was it melted?
Yeah, no.
It wasn't, was it?
No.
We bought you a Bueno as a kind giftoid. I might steal that other one that's on your tummy.
No.
We camped high on the Quantux, under some trees and out of sight of watching eyes. The alternative, which none of us fancied, was to come down off the ridge and find a campsite at the bottom, only to have to climb back up again in the morning. Bedded down behind the bracken in a small hollow, the boys kept rolling into me, and most of the night was spent in a jostle of elbows and knees. I awoke with a start in the early hours to the sound of someone trying to drag the bikes away. I leapt up, unzipped the inner and stuck my head out. I could see nothing. I told myself I was being stupid, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. 3 times this happened, and just as I was about to leap out with my multi-tool unfurled, the thieves let out a loud "Bah!" The rest of the night was a riotous assembly of bleating, neighing, slithering and crunching. Who knows what it all was, but I heard it all.
The reality of many of our hours is trying to get across stuff like this, which is just incredibly difficult. Billy, how are you finding it?
It's alright.
It's alright. And it's just this track is really not very cyclable and in the teeth of the gale. So we might have to look for an alternative. Ned is cycling it, but only just. Billy's off now into a ditch. There we go. That's the reality of many of our escapades.
Exmoor made us work. Leaving Dunster by a vertical byway up through the woods, we reached a high track where the flies whirled around us like halos. A blonde woman walking the other way was similarly afflicted and waved her hands about in awful greeting. The hill then dropped us down via a slick chute of red mud and rubble so steep we just clung on and hoped. We then climbed 3 miles again up onto Dunkery Beacon as the views opened across to Barry Island and Lundy Island floating in the Bristol Channel as if it were Avalon. From there, the tracks disintegrated into rotted moorland, and we pushed and pedalled alternatively for miles into a wind that pushed hard back against us. We made it, but it had been a hard day.
1,000 miles of cycling, and they still fool around on the bikes. So they're clearly still having fun. This is the Tarka Trail that we did on our training run. There's one little numpty. Hooray! There's another little numpty.
Right, last night yesterday we came over Exmoor and had a horrible moor pushing through unrideable grassy fields and rottedness. And then we took quick roads to our campsite that we stayed at last night. We got heavy rain overnight, but woke up and the rain had stopped, which was all good, so we could pack up our soaking wet tent, but other than that we managed to stay reasonably dry. Headed onto the Tarka Trail, which we did on the first day of our Devon Coast to Coast training thing before the ride, and we've made good progress. We're miles ahead of where we were last time, we're pretty sure. And we're now sat in a sunny spot where we've just had toffee crisp for a boost.
Billy, what have you got to say about today?
This point's not very slippy.
What happened? Why do you know it's slippy, Billy?
I don't know.
Would you like to explain to us what
I'm sitting
happened?
on it.
What embarrassing thing happened in front of a whole load of
Wasn't
walkers?
embarrassing 'cause I stayed standing.
So what happened? You crashed in front of some walkers. What did the walkers say when you?
I tried to jump this and it didn't go well.
What-
'Cause it's really basic.
What did the walkers say when you crashed?
Nothing. They said you're right.
Okay, good. They didn't dance on your grave anyway. Well done. Well done, Billy. How many crashes this so far? 5?
Not that many.
4 or 5, I reckon. I've had one. I'm doing it. You've got to admit though that I've had the most ludicrously
Yeah,
spectacular
you just flop
Yeah,
and end up with a
exactly.
bike lying on your own.
splat in the water. And has Ned had a major crash?
I had one big one, I can't remember it. What
Yeah,
was
you
it?
slipped on a rock.
Apparently they're trying to make a Nike tick. There you go, and I thought it was Nike. Oh well, I must be confusing it with a Greek goddess.
So we're outside Hatherley. There's another trackless piece. There's Dartmoor and Oakhampton below it. And that's where we're going. Just there somewhere.
We're in the midpoint between Cornwall and Devon.
We're on the Tamar! We've got all the way from John O'Groats to the Tamar. I'm probably going to get run over crossing the road. Oh, I'm not going to cross the road now. Cars, cars. So, after 1,100 miles or whatever it is, we've made it across the Tamar. How'd you feel, Edmund?
Very good.
How'd you feel, Billmond?
Good.
What?
Ba-ba-da-da-da-da.
There it is.
We need to
That's
deport
it.
Ned.
Up on the Bodmin Moor. So this is the top of Bodmin Moor. It's got a vague track. We're following those sheep. So now the sheep take us where we want to go. We found the track again. We're going off down there somewhere into the rain to find Jamaica Inn. And
find our escort. Across there, you can probably see there's the main road there. Our escort on the main road for 2 miles, which I was scared about. That was a bit spiky, wasn't it? I rode that lump and didn't end up on my face.
The 2 miles on the A30 were the most terrifying 15 or 20 minutes of the ride. We toiled up the hill with Claire driving behind with our hazard lights on, as cars, buses and lorries blasted past us, perhaps 70 miles per hour faster than us. Eventually we threw the bikes over a barbed wire fence and escaped up a hill, where a beaten up van stood surrounded by panicking birds of prey in their traces.
Leaving Newquay.
Filipino head arm lock. With leg lock. Escape it, Billy. Ow. Escape it. Never. Tap out. Tap out. Tap out. Tap out. Well, that doesn't count then, does it? I don't think I would still Filipino leg lock.
Right and then left immediately. What's this bit like, Ned? Once you through that, you're through the worst, and then it opens up where I am. You need a way of locking the front steering, don't you? So you can push the bike ahead of you, because it's just not the width for a bike and human being. Down. It was very difficult. Paths are punished into brambles and the like. How was that, Billy?
That was tough.
How are your legs? Have a look.
Okay.
Too bad.
They're really stinky though.
How was that, Nelson? Stingy, painful.
In Cornwall, some 15 miles from the end, the pink sat-nav line took us over barbed wire and through deep soggy ruts. The track deteriorated steadily until it was just a narrow snicket between head-high gorse, bramble and hawthorn. Soon our shins were running with blood, and this went on for miles. At one point, having fallen on my butt in gorse twice in 5 minutes, I could see the track but was almost sobbing with frustration at the effort of trying to drag the bike through the undergrowth to get there. A journey we guessed would take 3 hours took 5 to take us to the end.
Where are we?
Senna Cove, on top of the well, we're just about to go over the cliffs and be at Land's End, 1.3 miles away.
How'd you feel, Billy?
Pretty tough.
tired?
Easy day?
No.
Did you have a lot of lovely moors?
Yeah.
Boys, you've been a brilliant team. Well done. I couldn't have done it on my own, and I'm delighted to have had the chance to do it with you two. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Billy.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Ned. Shall we go and wave at these people who are standing waiting for us?
A month after we finished the ride, I asked the boys in an Indian restaurant what they remembered.
So there was a fun descent into the hydroelectricity place. What was that called?
I don't know.
The place with the big hydroelectricity. Before the double staircase. Day before that.
Kinloch Leven.
Yeah, that was a fun descent down into there.
And boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
boom, boom,
big
boom,
rocks
boom, boom,
all the way down.
boom. Big gaps, big rocks,
Yeah.
big down.
So which was your favourite part of the ride?
My favourite, I reckon, was reaching the top of Loch Cole. Looking back on the loch was pretty cool.
What about you, Billy?
My favourite was... Probably the side of Loch Ness. That was good. It's a really nice single track going through the woods
That
down.
was good.
Nice and neat all the way down.
What was your favourite beastie or creature that you saw, or least favourite?
My favourite beastie was I reckon it was probably the stags. 3 stags. That was heading towards Loch Cole.
No, away from Loch
Was it? Away from Loch Cole.
Laughter.
Yeah, that's
what
good.
creatures? Can you be seen there?
My favourite beastie was probably...
Snake. He yawned at you, bro.
Yeah, true. A snake did join me. And my least favourite was probably Terry the horsefly. He
Oh,
followed
yeah,
us
no
for
one
about
really liked
300
Terry.
miles, maybe. All the way down through the country.
And what was your best crash?
Best
No,
crash.
well,
Ooh.
I was just getting sabotaged by Billy. Billy would just see a gorse bush, not like look at him, like, just absolutely obliterate me off
did
into
that
the moor
once,
somewhere.
and I didn't do that. You went into the side of me.
Oh,
Because I'm a
there's a gorse
solid
bush, I'll just
nose.
absolutely obliterate you and just to get myself
would've
out of the
went
way
up
of the
too
gorse
if that
bush. You
happened.
could have pressed the brakes.
What was your best crash?
My best crash.
A gymnast front flip.
Yeah, probably front
Carefully
flip
with
into a
precision
stream.
landing into a stream.
But
And
I
then lay
bum
in the
landed.
stream.
Yeah,
With your padded.
well, I didn't notice I
soaking
was
up
in a
water.
stream. So,
You sat there for at least 20 seconds longer than you needed to.
yeah, well, at least I didn't wreck with the electrics.
Fair play.
what was the best night on the...
The ones I slept.
Best night, the one in the hotel, probably. Where we went in
Oh,
a
that was
tent.
quite good to be honest. That was comfy.
It was really comfy.
It was quite fun sleeping in the hedge on the top of the ridge. 'Cause it meant we'd slept in a hedge at the top of a ridge.
I didn't see why you'd want to sleep in a hedge
And
at
it was
the top
wild
of the ridge.
camping and it was cool. And then we got robbed by sheep.
What was the worst night?
Worst night was...
Kid not left. It was midgy. It was stinky.
Yeah.
Really rainy.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that wasn't
The
good.
tent was getting blown away.
Yeah.
After we finished the ride, I felt so down. For almost a month, I'd known exactly what I was doing day after day, and suddenly I had to work out what to do next. But I had promised the boys a new bike each, and so kind of the costs kept on coming, so we got them the bikes that they wanted. Overall, it was brilliant. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. And there's a bit of Wales that we cut out that is waiting for us, I reckon 4 or 5 days, that I hope we'll get around to doing once the weather gets better again in the spring. And then who knows?